Good afternoon, Senator.
Good. How are you?
Awesome. And we hope you're well too. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know that there's never a dull moment in the halls of Congress, or not for a very long time anyway.
At least this is an especially difficult time, given
Sure is.
our own economy and the war in Ukraine and so forth and so on. Well, it's good to be with you. You guys are looking good.
And it's all intertwined. Why, thank you. You're looking good too. And we appreciate, again, you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know it's been a while since we've been able to connect with you. And this is a time of year where normally we'd be in Washington, which we were last week for a conference, but scheduling with our congressional offices just wasn't in the cards. So we're fortunate to be able to be doing this virtually today. And we're also fortunate to have people who are employees, chief executives, and board members of credit unions from all the corners of the state. So they're all here to chat with you. And we thought we have a few things to share with you about some issues and, what we're seeing with people who do business with credit unions and businesses. But first, we thought it'd be good to hear from you on anything that you feel that, on your plate right now that you think is appropriate to share with us. And if not, that we can move on.
Yeah, let's move on. I'm sure there'll be issues developing. It's a strange time for the country right now. With a little bit of luck getting out of the pandemic, and
right,
have to deal with the disruptions in the economy, and we've got to worry about climate and all the other problems that we face. But the good news that I'm sure that all of you are aware is that as a result of the American Rescue Plan and other legislation, there's a lot of money that's come into Montpelier that can and I hope will be used for affordable housing, for childcare, for education, for healthcare, and so forth. So there's a lot to work with in the state to try to improve life. So, all right, with that, what do you guys got?
And that's awesome. And that mention of housing is a cue. I mean, there are other things we could talk to you about, but John Dwyer, I'm looking at you at New England Federal Credit Union, and housing has been, a major focus of New England Federal Credit Union for some time. So can you share with the senator about what's going on?
Sure, happy to. Hi, Senator. Nice to see you again. What you may know is last fall we announced some obviously support from New England Federal as well as the broader industry. Specifically, we all have a number of first-time homebuyer programs, but I can give you just a few statistics. We've actually helped since last October 29 member households get into their first home. That help included not only nephew paying the mortgage insurance for those 29 member households, that's over $150,000, but also a no payment, no interest second loan to give them money for a down payment. That program has another 90 members that are looking for homes in Vermont right now. And the good news is 11 have found homes. The challenge, as you are well aware of, and you alluded to a moment ago, the level of support from the federal government to have an impact, a long needed impact on affordable housing here in Vermont. There's just some great opportunities for that to happen. I'm sure you saw the news about the CHT program for 100 homes in Heinsberg that was announced last week. We're involved with CHT as we are with VHFA as well. So whenever you think about credit unions, know that this is a place we're in every day, and it's something we work on every day for Vermonters, is to help them
Well, I
get
think we're all in agreement that for many people, the cost of housing in Vermont is just too high.
Yep.
And I was surprised that I did a town hall, a telephone town hall, which had zillions of people calling in. And I am familiar with the fact that housing in Chittenden County is very, very high in other of our urban areas. A woman calls me up from Coventry, for God's sakes, and says the cost of housing is going up there. So it's apparently a problem all over the state.
It is, and I think again that we see it in not only the first-time home buyer, but throughout the real estate spectrum. Certainly, people trying to trade into larger homes see a limited supply. There are clear issues with supply across the state,
And
higher prices.
And please correct me if I'm wrong here. It's like, but there's been a lot of home buying from out-of-state people who wanted to escape urban areas in terms of the pandemic, which has driven prices up as well. Is that accurate?
Well, anytime you have more buyers than sellers, yes, that's going to have an impact on the price. I don't know that we can validate the external Vermonter, or the out-of-stater coming in and buying, because most of those don't include mortgages. So that's.
Is that right? They just buy with cash?
Yeah, many do. So we're not involved in that transaction, is what I mean. So I can't validate how much of a share they are.
Yeah. Okay. Joe?
Thank you, John. There are some housekeeping kind of pieces of legislation that I won't burden you with today, but we'll share that with your staff. And I think we've shared some of it before, but there are a couple larger things I think we've probably touched on before, but are still important. It's the Safe Banking Act, which I believe you're familiar with. We've talked about for some time now. Has been kicking around in the halls of Congress for quite a few years now. With the opening in the fall of this year of the first the storefronts, I guess I'll call it, for recreational marijuana in the state of Vermont. My experience with Vermont's state house legislators is there's this assumption that credit unions are going to, do business and with financial services with those new merchants that come onto the scene of Vermont with welcome arms and whatnot. And the conflict between state and federal law as far as legality and whatnot is one of the hindrances to any financial institution for wanting to do that. Rob, you have the only experience in the state of Vermont with that as the only financial institution that's been serving that industry for some years now.
Yeah, and Senator, hello, Rob Miller from VSECU. I know that you've argued for full legalization of marijuana, and that does solve the issue in totality in many ways. Absent that, though, the Safe Banking Act does provide at least address some of the risk elements that would encourage other financial institutions to potentially enter into the market. And in Vermont, it's exacerbated by the fact that it's going to be a small market regardless. And so there isn't a lot of, certainly not a lot of financial motivation, but there's virtually no financial motivation with the elevated risk. For us, it's a financial access issue. What we want to avoid is creating yet another group, in this case, businesses, that don't have access to financial systems. So that's the principal reason that we do it. We've incurred cost in order to do it. The Safe Banking Act, I think, would provide a little bit more motivation for other financial institutions to potentially enter the market.
I should think that as more and more states legalize marijuana, this will become something that more of my colleagues think has to be done. Don't you think?
I think so, and we are anecdotally hearing from other institutions that I think are looking at it. And the environment today, I think, is in some respects the same, but in other respects kind of fundamentally different in the sense that it's not as taboo of a subject as it was perhaps 5 years ago.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So I think over time, you're right. It will, I think, resolve itself. But given the bipartisan support for the Safe Banking Act, I mean, I know it seems logical that it should pass, and it does seem logical that it should pass. It's disappointing to see that it gets hung up.
Okay, Joe.
So another area that we're still, and again, we've talked to you about before, and others, obviously, everybody in Congress, is member business lending. Credit unions did an inordinate amount of PPP lending, but that was separate from the regular business lending that they do, although it was to a lot of the same businesses. But what that has served to do, as you'll hear from a couple of credit unions here, is to draw even more businesses to credit unions looking for financial
By the way,
services.
let me just interrupt you, ask you, so I haven't asked you this lately. How are credit unions doing? I'm presuming they're doing pretty well. Is that the case?
Well, all of these people can speak to their individual circumstances, but as a whole, credit unions are doing phenomenal. I think they're doing great. Particularly since 2008, 2009, and the mortgage meltdown and everything, more and more people have been drawn to credit unions, and we have something like Vermont credit union serves something like 410,000 people now. Not all of those people probably live in Vermont, but that's a lot of members nonetheless. There's probably about 380 plus of them that live in Vermont, 1,000. And Vermont credit unions last year, for example, put $722 million into the Vermont economy. So that's small across the country, but by Vermont standards, that's pretty big. So we're real proud of the success Vermont credit unions have had.
Okay, good. So business is good. And people continue to look to credit unions. Good.
For sure. And Matt and Gene, can you follow up on that a little bit?
Sure can, Joe. Good afternoon, Senator. Matt Lewandowski from Heritage Family Credit Union down in Rutland. And as Joe alluded to, the member business lending cap really has been floated around for quite a while. And ever since COVID, we have gotten such an influx of new member businesses that it is now created. We're pushing up against that cap. We're about $22 million away from the cap. Might seem like a lot, but that's probably within a year to 18 months that we're going to hit that cap. And what it's doing is it's making us manage the lending to these businesses to make sure that we have the capacity to continue to lend. Because once we hit that cap, we're in trouble. So we've been participating out some of our loans. We've been working with other credit unions. The problem is other credit unions are in the same boat that we're in right now. So it is becoming an issue for us because since the PPP loans, we did about 24 million in PPP loans to about 600 businesses. And those businesses, a lot of those businesses were not our members.
Let me ask you, if I can, Matt.
Yep.
How was the federal government in that process? Was the bureaucracy okay, or?
We had them out in 3 days. Yeah, it was fine. Once SBA got that all their items squared away, we were able to process those loans very quickly. And that's why we got so many loans, because the banks didn't want to deal with them. So they came to us, and we were happy to do them.
And were some of those businesses pretty small businesses?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we actually helped a bunch of small businesses that, like I said, the other financial institutions, the banks, didn't really want to deal with them because they were too small. So we processed them quickly. We were able to get them out, and that now they are real members of ours looking for new loans.
Would I be correct in saying that those loans were a lifesaver for a lot of small businesses?
Yes, you would. You would be correct in saying that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, especially for a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the businesses that were shut down weren't able to make it through. Absolutely. Yeah, they needed that money.
The federal government deservedly gets criticized every day, and that's fine. But occasionally, I think it does the right thing. And that was an instance where it did something that saved a lot of small businesses and really brought the economy back. Correct?
Correct. And in turn, now a lot of the businesses that got the PPPs are in better financial shape than they were previously.
Good.
So that really helps. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for your help on that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, Joe.
Gene, I'm looking at you, just wondering if you can talk a little bit about the small businesses that you've helped since PPP.
Sure. Hi, Senator. Thank you for joining us. This is Jean Guyard from Vermont Federal Credit Union. And we had the same situation that we got a lot of new businesses, small businesses, very small businesses, as a result of the PPP loans and as a result of the larger institutions not being able to get to the small ones. And I give you an example of hair salons and businesses of that size that we got during the PPP process. The problem is, and the good part is that they are asking us for loans, and we are also beginning to hit the cap. I think we are about a year away from hitting the cap. We've got about 20 million And we have about 105 million in small business loans to all sorts of members. And we're going to be hitting that cap in about a year, maybe 18 months, as Matt said.
All right, let me just jump in if I might. But what I hear from you and Matt is that, and this is kind of a unintended consequence, that these federal loans ended up helping credit unions because they were prepared to help small businesses that the larger banks were not. So that was kind of an unintended consequence, I think, that worked well for you, yeah?
Yes, sir. And that is what we heard from some of the small businesses that came over to us.
That you were willing to help them what the larger banks were not.
We had the capacity to help them out, where there's the larger banks, I think we're concentrating on larger loans, yes.
Right.
And with the consolidation of loans in the, banks in the state of Vermont, it's getting, I think, more and more difficult for a small business to be paid attention to when it comes to borrowing.
And you guys do a pretty good job at that.
We are the ones that they turn to when a small business needs a loan, and it's becoming more and more. The word of mouth is out there. I think we're seeing more and more members come to more people joining the credit union, coming to us for loans.
Good.
But we're going to get to a point where we can't help them.
Right. I got that message loud and clear.
All right. Thank you.
One issue, Senator, we haven't talked to you about before, and there's no legislation on the table at the moment, but it's probably going to be imminent, is anything to do with cryptocurrencies and digital assets. I think that everybody working in any Vermont credit union or any credit union nationwide would admit to you that, they know that people that have accounts with them are, some of them anyway, and an increasing number of them are dabbling in that world and moving money from their bank or credit union into the crypto digital asset world. And, it's an unregulated environment and whatnot, and there's all kinds of variables and whatnot. And some credit unions in the country have had, and maybe some here, I don't know, have had people come back and, want to collateralize their loan from their credit union with, their Bitcoin account or something like that. And so it's a strange new world out there in that arena. And, credit unions are not highly active in that and can't be highly active in that arena yet, but we know the day is coming pretty soon, not just for credit unions, but for banks too. John or anybody else, you were talking about that earlier and you had some good points.
Yes, Senator, just the point is that as the Federal Reserve evaluates their plans around stable coins and the CDBC, central bank digital currency. So if the Fed actually issues a digital currency, one of the keys for the credit union industry is to have the same access to that, those delivery products and how to deliver them as other financial institutions that are federally insured. So there's no legislation yet, but we do expect in the coming months or next couple of years, as the Fed develops their plans, as the Treasury Department develops its plans, we'll be back in front of you with trying to make sure that we can help members gain access to those.
Joe, there's an issue you didn't mention, although we've talked about it in the past, and maybe it's of increasing concern now, and that is hacking into your accounts. Is that a concern? And have we seen much of that, or?
Cybersecurity is, still a concern, and the liability that goes along with it, and security safeguards. I recall, John, you were, that was on patents, I think you were testifying on, but at the same time, different subject, but at the same time, there was a lot of discussion in the halls of Congress about, security and all of that. And our position has always been that with regard to financial transactions, anybody who touches a financial transaction, whether it's a merchant or some processor of some sort or anybody else, should have the same requirements for the care and safety of that transaction as a financial institution issuing that card or holding the account does, whether it's a bank, credit union, or whatever other kind of entity. And our argument has been right along that financial institutions, when there's a loss to somebody's account, the financial institution shoulders all of the loss, even though it's somebody else's doing that brought about that loss. So that's one of our concerns. Cybersecurity, there all obviously need to be, there's heightened concern about cybersecurity when you're talking about international players and whatnot, hacking into whether it's financial institutions like the ones on the line, federal government, or, whoever else out there. So there's a lot of concern about that. And we would, support legislation that tries to address those kinds of issues without putting undue burdens.
But there has not been any major problems in that area in the last year or so?
I would say, just for one voice, Senator, that it is happening every day to all of us. The attempts, phishing attempts, the attempts to get into our systems. We have obviously safeguards and monitoring systems, but I would say that the issue is growing. The frequency is growing, and our work is growing to try to just protect and take care of the responsibilities we have. So it's absolutely an issue. Now, fortunately, thus far, we don't have any really bad stories to tell you similar to what happened at the medical center. But those issues are real. They are certainly very prevalent.
And as Joe mentioned, given the international situation, they could be worse. So we got to be vigilant on that.
Yes.
And I would also offer, Senator, that the cost of insurance coverage for those losses is going up dramatically, and the coverage is going down because of the increase in the prevalence of those attacks throughout the world, but certainly here in the U.S.
Do you guys have the technical assistance that you need to protect your accounts?
We
It's
certainly
not
believe
cheap,
you.
but yeah.
Again, I wouldn't speak for all of us, but I can say that many of us share, we communicate with each other. There's a group within Vermont that's not just credit unions, but also other banks that share resources, that share information. But we all have resources within our organizations to address data security and data protection. But it is certainly still very risky and still a very common challenge.
And it's an expensive proposition for you guys, huh?
Sure.
It is.
Okay.
The more that goes onto the cloud, and I say the more data that goes onto the cloud, and more of our vendors are now only offering us services that are cloud-based. That is just one, not to say the cloud is inherently different than in-house, but there are some differences that add to the risk.
All right, Joe, anything else?
They have any other things you want to touch on that we haven't gotten to?
Okay, well, listen.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Well, thank you all very much. As I think you all know, I'm a big fan and supporter of credit unions. And
Yes, you are.
I miss going to the annual events. Are you doing them in person? Have you done any recently in person or no?
Our first annual event that you recall going to is in May of this year. We'll see how that goes because it's a strange world. So there's a lot that can happen between now and
Are you
May.
planning to make it an in-person event?
We're planning that, yes.
I have the same problems here. We're planning events, not quite sure whether they're going to be in person or virtual.
Exactly. You got it. Exactly.
Well, invite me to it. I'd love to come if it is in
We
person.
certainly will.
You are invited, sir.
There you go. Okay, good. Okay, guys. Hey, thanks very much for all that you're doing. And let's keep working together. And obviously, the office is here and available to you if there are any issues that you need us to help address. Okay? Thank you all very much.
Senator.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
And thank you, everybody else on the line, for sticking with us this afternoon through all of these discussions since 2 o'clock. Sorry to take up your, what for me anyway, is a sunny afternoon, but we appreciate your dedication. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.